Arab executive gave $1 to a candy-selling boy who said, "You look just like my dad." He turned around and cried. He was just another billionaire executive leaving a shareholders' meeting in downtown Dubai, polished suit, bodyguards and all. But in the middle of the chaos, a barefoot boy approached him, holding a tray of melting candy, his voice trembling. "Sir, would you like one for just $1? The executive barely glanced down, but out of habit, or maybe guilt, he handed the boy a bill. Then something unexpected happened. The boy didn't run off or thank him. He looked into the man's eyes, hesitated, and said something that hit him like a punch to the chest. "You look just like my dad." Before he left. The executive stopped in his tracks. He turned around slowly, eyes wide, breath caught, and for the first time in years, he cried in public. What followed was a story that would change both of their lives forever, and leave everyone who witnessed it in absolute shock. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on the notification bell. That way, you won't miss any of our most emotional and inspiring stories based on real human connections and the power of compassion. The sun was brutal that afternoon, casting golden heat across the glittering skyscrapers of downtown Dubai. Luxury cars purred through the avenues. Inside the towering glass headquarters of Al Hakim Enterprises, board members buzzed around in tailored suits, tossing around numbers worth more than most people would see in a lifetime. And then there was him, Khalid Al Hakim, 46 years old, CEO, billionaire, feared, respected, always composed. His security detail flanked him as he exited the revolving doors of his empire, sunglasses on, jaw locked, heading straight for the waiting Rolls-Royce. But just a few feet from the car, something disrupted the rhythm of his world. "Sir, candy, $1. The voice was small, fragile, almost swallowed by the city noise. Khalid barely glanced in the direction of the sound. Just another street boy, probably one of the dozens he'd passed that week. He had no space in his mind for this. But for some reason, some strange instinct, his hand paused on the car door handle. He turned slightly, and there he was. A boy, no older than 9. Dark hair tangled in knots, dusty shirt hanging off his tiny frame, and a tray of sun-softened candy bars clutched against his chest. The boy didn't beg, didn't plead. He simply stood there, eyes wide, hopeful and waiting. Khalid reached into his pocket and pulled out a single US dollar, crisp, as if unused. He handed it to the boy without a word, ready to move on. But the boy didn't take the candy. He just looked at Khalid, long, too long. "What?" Khalid muttered, his tone sharper than he intended. The boy blinked. You look like my dad." Khalid's breath caught. "I mean, not now," the boy added quickly, almost whispering, "before he left." Silence fell around them. The world kept moving, cars passing, phones ringing, conversations echoing. But for Khalid, everything else stopped. He turned fully to face the child, eyes no longer hidden by expensive sunglasses. His features softened. Something ancient, something buried deep within him, stirred. "What's your name?" Khalid asked, his voice lower now, gentler. "Yusef," the boy replied. "My mom says he left to find a better life, but he never came back." Khalid swallowed hard. It had been over 30 years since he'd looked in a mirror and seen his own father's eyes staring back. 30 years since the day he was told his father had walked away from their family, promising to return with opportunity, but never did. Khalid had sworn never to become that man, never to leave someone behind, never to care again. But this boy, this tiny stranger, had just cracked open a door he'd kept shut for decades. "I'm not your father," Khalid said, not unkindly. Yusef nodded. "I know, but I hoped." Khalid turned. He wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was the ghost of his own childhood clinging to the edges of the moment. Maybe it was guilt for all the things money could never buy back. Whatever it was, he turned his back on the boy and felt something he hadn't felt since he was 12. Tears, not rage, not anger, just silent, unexpected grief. The driver opened the car door. Khalid didn't move. Behind him, Yusef stood motionless, still holding the tray. A security guard leaned in, unsure. "Sir?" Khalid waved him off. "Give me a minute." And there, on a scorching sidewalk, in one of the richest cities in the world, a billionaire stood frozen, haunted by a child's voice and a face that didn't belong to him, yet somehow did. The question now wasn't what Khalid would do in that moment. The real question was, why did the boy recognize something in him that he had forgotten about himself? Khalid didn't sleep that night. He sat in the corner of his penthouse, lights off, city lights flickering below, the glass walls around him turning the room into a shimmering cage. He'd had board meetings, dinner offers, a late-night call with investors in Singapore, but none of it mattered. His mind had stayed anchored to a single moment. "You look like my dad." Before he left. He hadn't asked the boy for more. Not his full name, not where he lived, not even why he was selling candy under the unforgiving sun in one of the richest cities on earth. And now, alone in a room worth millions, Khalid realized he regretted that more than anything he'd done in business. The face of the boy haunted him. The resemblance wasn't physical. It was emotional. It was in the way the boy looked at him, not with desperation, but with recognition. Like he had stared into Khalid's soul and seen something no one else had noticed in years. The next morning, he returned. Same street, same building, same corner. No sign of Yusef. He came again the next day. and the next. His bodyguards began to raise questions, and whispers trickled through his staff like a slow leak. Why was the billionaire delaying meetings to pace city blocks? What was he searching for? Then, on the fourth day, as he was about to give up, a voice called out behind him. "Sir!" He turned. Yusef stood by a lamp-post, holding a now empty tray, sweat on his brow, eyes brighter than Khalid remembered. "I hoped I'd see you again," the boy said. Khalid crossed the sidewalk in long, deliberate steps. He wasn't used to his emotions leading his actions. But around this child, the executive armor he wore for decades cracked. "I didn't get to thank you," Yusef said softly. "That $1 helped us buy rice." Khalid knelt, his Italian suit crinkling in ways he didn't care about. "Where's your mother?" "She works night shifts, cleaning offices. She sleeps during the day." "Where do you live?" Yusef looked away. "Al-Karama, by the bridge. It's not a real place. Just metal and blankets." Khalid felt his stomach turn. That neighborhood had been condemned for redevelopment months ago. He remembered the reports, how hundreds of families had been displaced. Yet somehow, the boy had slipped through the cracks. Suddenly, a sharp voice cut through the air. "You again?" A man in a yellow vest marched toward them. Municipal guard. Frowning. "You can't loiter here. We told you people. Begging isn't allowed." "He's not begging," Khalid said calmly, standing tall. The guard blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said, he's not begging. He's working. And you're speaking to Khalid al-Hakim." Recognition hit the man like a slap. "Oh, Mr. al-Hakim, I didn't realize. Of course. I apologize, sir." Khalid waved a hand. "Go." The guard vanished. Yusef looked up at him, wide-eyed. "They always yell, always." Khalid felt anger rise in his chest. He had spent his life fighting for boardroom respect, building a name that echoed across continents. But none of it had shielded this child. His power meant nothing if he didn't use it. "Come with me," Khalid said. Yusef hesitated. "Where?" "To my office. I want to understand." Yusef's lips trembled. "Are you going to take me away from my mom?" "No," Khalid said, surprised by the weight of that question. "I want to help you both. That's all." They walked side by side into the lobby of Al-Hakim Tower, one of the tallest in the world. Heads turned, executives stared. A child in torn sandals walking beside a billionaire in tailored Armani. The image was surreal. But Khalid didn't flinch. He led Yusef to his private suite, offered him orange juice, and for the first time let someone interrupt his schedule without a single signature or financial motive involved. "What do you dream of, Yusef?" he asked. Yusef smiled, shy. "I want my mom to sleep in a bed. And I want to go to school." Khalid leaned back, throat tight. Simple dreams. Dreams that money could buy in seconds, and yet had eluded this boy all his life. But as Khalid looked into the child's eyes again, he saw something else. A truth he hadn't admitted yet. It wasn't just about helping the boy. It was about healing a part of himself he thought was long dead. The skyline of Dubai shimmered through the glass walls of Khalid's office. He had spent 2 decades in that room, closing billion-dollar deals, silencing competitors, dominating markets across 3 continents. But never, not once, had he sat across from a barefoot child with candy-stained fingers and calluses on his feet. Yusuf gripped the cup of juice in both hands, sipping slowly, like it was a luxury he hadn't earned. Khalid watched him, not with pity, but with a strange mixture of admiration and guilt. This boy had more dignity in rags than most men Khalid negotiated with in silk. "So," Khalid finally said, voice steady, "tell me about your father." Yusuf shrugged. "I don't know much. I was really little. Mama says he was a driver. He left one morning and didn't come back." Khalid nodded. That story wasn't uncommon. Men came to the city for work, for hope, for escape. Many disappeared, some by choice, others swallowed by the system. "He never called?" Khalid asked. "No," Yusuf whispered, "but I remember something. He used to wear a silver ring with a black stone. Mama still cries when she talks about it." Khalid's heart skipped. A ring, silver, black onyx, the same kind his own father wore, always spinning it around his finger when he was thinking, always polished like it meant more than just jewelry. He shook the thought away. Coincidence. Just coincidence. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Nabil, his assistant of 15 years, always professional, never emotional. "Sir," he said, glancing briefly at Yusuf, "we have the investors from Geneva waiting in the conference room." Khalid didn't look away from the boy. "Reschedule." "Sir, this meeting—" "I said reschedule." Nabil blinked. "Of course." He left without another word, but Khalid could sense the storm coming. The whispers, the confusion. A billionaire CEO canceling international meetings for a street child? That would raise more than a few eyebrows. "Why are you helping me?" Yusuf asked, breaking the silence. Khalid leaned forward. "Because no one helped me when I was your age." Yusuf tilted his head. "You were poor?" Khalid smiled bitterly. "Poor in ways you wouldn't understand. Not on the outside, but inside, yes." Yusuf nodded like he understood anyway. Maybe he did. Pain spoke its own language. Later that day, Khalid did something he hadn't done in years. He left the tower without his entourage. No driver, no assistant, just him and Yusuf walking through the older parts of the city toward the bridge near Al-Karama. They passed markets, vendors, children playing with dented footballs. Yusuf walked with confidence here, pointing out alleyways, ducking past dogs and broken crates. Then he stopped. "There," he said. It wasn't a home. It was a corner made of cardboard and bent metal sheets. A thin blanket hung like a curtain. A dented cooking pot sat on the ground next to a plastic water jug. A woman emerged. She was no older than 35, but her back was bent, her eyes sunken. Her hands trembled slightly as she wiped them on her dress. "Mama," Yusuf said softly, "he's the man I told you about." Her eyes met Khalid's, and in that moment, something shifted. Her lips parted, and then she fainted. Khalid caught her before her head hit the concrete. Yusuf cried out, "Mama!" They laid her gently against the wall. After a few moments, she opened her eyes, breathing hard. I thought I was seeing a ghost," she whispered. Khalid's voice was low. "Do I know you?" She stared at him, trembling. "Your name is Khalid al-Hakim, isn't it?" He froze. "Yes." Tears filled her eyes. "I think you might be my son's uncle." The world tilted. Khalid felt the ground sway under his feet. His mouth opened, then closed. Words vanished. She reached into the curtain and pulled out an old photo. Faded, bent, but unmistakable. A younger man, broad shoulders, dark beard, wearing a silver ring with a black stone, and standing next to him, a teenage Khalid. The image hit him like a punch to the chest. The man in the photo was his brother, Farid, the one who had disappeared 15 years ago after a fight so brutal they never spoke again. Yusuf wasn't just any child. He was his nephew. The photo trembled in Khalid's hand. Time had faded the edges, but the faces were unmistakable. His brother Farid, arms slung casually around Khalid's teenage shoulders, both grinning under a summer sun somewhere near Sharjah. It was the last picture ever taken of them together, before everything went wrong. Khalid hadn't seen that photo in over 15 years. He could barely process the woman's words, could hardly hear Yusuf's worried voice tugging at his sleeve, whispering, "Is she okay? What's happening?" He stared at the woman lying on the thin blanket, eyes now open, her breathing steadying. She looked back at him, not with anger, but with exhaustion. The kind of tiredness that came from holding on to truth for too long. "You're Farid's brother?" she asked again, quieter this time, like maybe she was doubting herself. "Yes," Khalid said finally. His voice cracked. He didn't care. Where is he?" he asked, his throat dry. The woman, her name was Amina, she later told him, looked away, tears collecting in her eyes. "He's gone." The words struck like a blow. Khalid's breath caught. He left for Oman. to look for work when I was pregnant with Yusef. Said he had a cousin who could help him get into the construction business there, but he never came back. Her hands trembled. I waited, for weeks, then months. I went to the border myself. No records, no body, no name. It was like he disappeared into smoke. Khalid sat down slowly beside her. His mind raced backward, through decades of silence. He and Farid had been close once, blood brothers in every sense. But Farid had always challenged him, questioned his obsession with ambition, accused him of leaving their mother behind when the money started coming in. Their last fight had ended with slammed doors and cruel words neither of them ever took back. And now, Farid was gone. And this child, this boy, was his blood. "How long have you lived like this?" Khalid asked. Amina gave a broken laugh. "Too long. Every time we're pushed from one place, I find another. I clean, I sell, I survive. That's all there is." Khalid looked down at Yusef, who had pressed close to his mother, arms wrapped protectively around her. The boy's eyes were still wide with confusion, fear, and something else Khalid recognized. Loyalty. The kind that didn't ask questions. The kind that came from real love. He realized then that Yusef hadn't just reminded him of Farid. He had inherited his fire, his stubbornness, his eyes. A storm was building inside Khalid, a mix of grief, shame, and something harder to name. Why hadn't he looked for his brother? Why had he let silence become final? "Why didn't you reach out to me?" he asked Amina gently. "You must have known who I was." "I did," she said. "But Farid said not to. He made me promise. Said you'd already lost each other. That you were better off apart." She paused. "He didn't want you to see him struggle. He was too proud." That sounded like Farid. It also sounded like him. They had both let pride build walls too high to climb. Khalid looked around the small shelter. One gust of wind could take it down. And yet, here was this woman, raising a child, surviving storms every single day without a single complaint. He rose to his feet, took a long breath, and reached into his pocket. "I want you both to come with me," he said. "Today, now." Amina shook her head. "We can't just—" "You can," Khalid interrupted. "You should. Your family." Yusef blinked up at him. "Are you really my uncle?" Khalid crouched down. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Yes, Yusef, I am. And I should have been here a long time ago." Yusef's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't cry. He just nodded. And in that moment, something shifted. Khalid al-Hakim, the untouchable executive, the man known for building walls higher than his towers, had found a crack in his fortress, and through it, a child had walked in. But outside that small corner of the world, rumors were starting to swirl. News had leaked. Photos were snapped. A billionaire had been seen entering the slums of Al-Karama, with a child and a woman no one recognized. And powerful people were starting to ask, what secret is Khalid al-Hakim hiding? The headline hit the internet before Khalid even had time to breathe. Billionaire CEO seen in slums with unknown woman and child. Illegitimate family? Within hours, the story went viral. Blogs speculated. News anchors smirked through commentary. Investors panicked. Rumors spun into scandals faster than any truth could keep up. Words like hidden son, secret mistress, and embezzlement cover-up flooded social media. Khalid sat in his private office, blinds closed, 2 phones ringing off the hook. His legal team was waiting downstairs. PR had already drafted 3 different statements, all of which he refused to approve. He stared at the screen in front of him, where a blurry photo showed him crouched beside Youssef, hand on the boy's shoulder, face softened, in a rare moment of vulnerability. A moment that was never meant for cameras. Now it was being devoured by millions. "Sir," Nabil said, entering the room with caution. "The board is demanding an emergency meeting." Khalid didn't look away from the screen. "Let them demand." Nabil hesitated. "They're worried, sir. Stock dropped 8% in an hour. Geneva pulled out. Tokyo is reviewing contracts." Still, Khalid said nothing. "I need to ask," Nabil said more softly. "Is it true?" Khalid finally looked at him. "He's my nephew." The air thickened. "I didn't know until 3 days ago. His father was my brother." Nabil's mouth parted slightly. He had worked for Khalid for 15 years, and not once had he heard Khalid speak of a brother. "I see," he said. "Should I brief legal?" "No," Khalid replied. "This doesn't go through lawyers. Not this." He stood and walked to the window, pushing the blinds aside. The sun glared through, washing over the room with golden heat. Down below, photographers crowded near the entrance of the tower. Somewhere beyond them, Amina and Youssef were tucked into a temporary apartment Khalid had secured for them. He'd insisted on something quiet, safe, and out of the press's reach. But it hadn't worked. When the doorbell rang that afternoon, Khalid already knew who it would be. 2 men in suits, hard eyes, old money, board members. "Khalid," the taller one began without greeting. "We've supported you through difficult expansions, questionable deals, even the merger in Morocco. But this is different." "Why?" Khalid asked coolly, motioning for them to sit. "Because I helped a child? Because the world thinks he's yours." "And?" "And your silence implies guilt." Khalid leaned forward. "He is mine. In blood. In responsibility. His name is Youssef. He's the son of my brother, Farid, who vanished 15 years ago while trying to feed his family." A beat of silence. The shorter man spoke next. You have shareholders to answer to, billions on the line. We need to clean this up, issue a statement, deny the connection, say it's charity. Khalid's eyes narrowed. You want me to lie? We want you to protect the company, the taller one said. You built this empire. Are you really going to let it fall because of a boy who showed up out of nowhere? The room dropped into silence. Khalid stood. Leave. The two men exchanged looks. I said, leave, Khalid repeated. They stood slowly and walked out, but before the door closed, one of them said, You're risking everything for sentiment. Khalid stood in that silence for a long time. He walked to a shelf near the corner of the office. It held only one thing, an old wooden box. Inside it was the very first business plan he'd ever written, scribbled on paper when he was still living in a cramped studio with no AC. On the back of the last page, his brother had written, Don't forget who you are when they start clapping. He hadn't read it in years, but now the words burned into him like a brand. Later that evening, Khalid arrived at Amina's door. She opened it, eyes anxious, clearly having seen the storm swirling outside. I think we should leave the city, she said quietly. No, Khalid said. We stay. I'm not hiding you. But the press, let them talk. I built my empire with my name. Now I'll rebuild it with my truth. Yusuf stepped into the room, holding a drawing in his hand. A tower, sketched in crayon, with 3 stick figures standing in front of it. This is us, he said proudly. We live here now, right? Khalid knelt, smiled, and nodded. Yes, he said, but soon they'll see where you really belong. The world thought it could scare him back into silence. But they had underestimated one thing. For the first time in his life, Khalid al-Hakim had something to fight for that wasn't made of gold. Khalid sat across from the journalist in a live studio. Cameras pointed at him. Lights burned hot. Everyone expected a denial. Instead, he looked straight into the lens and said, That boy is my nephew. I didn't know until days ago. But now that I do, I won't pretend he doesn't exist. The anchor blinked. Are you adopting him? I already have. In my heart. The papers will follow. By the time the interview ended, the internet exploded. Hashtags praising Khalid trended worldwide. Others criticized him. But the truth was out. And for once, he didn't care. In a quiet apartment across town, Amina watched the screen with tears in her eyes. Yusuf jumped up and down, shouting, That's my uncle! But not everyone was celebrating. Outside, a black car waited. Inside it, a man studied Khalid's image on a tablet. He's making dangerous choices, the man muttered. Find out everything, especially about the boy. 3 nights later, Khalid received a letter slipped under his door. Walk away from the child, or your company burns. No signature, no trace. That night, Someone broke into the charity office Khalid had just opened in Yusef's name. Files were destroyed. Cameras mysteriously failed. But Khalid didn't back down. He doubled the security. He hired investigators, and he issued a challenge on air. I will not be blackmailed into abandoning a child. Enemies were revealing themselves, hidden rivals, bitter partners. But Khalid had made peace with one thing. The only legacy worth protecting was one built with heart, not just wealth. Yusef stood at the entrance of the international school, his backpack too big for his small frame. Khalid knelt beside him. You nervous? A little. You'll do great, he smiled. You're your father's son. Amina watched from a distance. Her eyes met Khalid's. No words passed, but the gratitude in her look said everything. That evening, Khalid received a call. His board was forcing a vote, resign, or they would dissolve his control over the company. He walked into the emergency meeting, looked each man in the eye, and said, I built this empire. If it ends because I chose to love a child, then let it burn. Weeks later, Khalid walked into a different kind of tower. A school for orphans and low-income families. The first of many under the Yusef Foundation. The cameras followed him again, but this time it wasn't scandal. It was inspiration. He spoke to a crowd. I was once a boy with nothing but a dream, and I lost myself chasing power. But it took a child to remind me of what truly matters. Yusef sat in the front row, proud, beaming. When Khalid stepped off stage, Yusef ran to him and whispered, I don't miss my dad as much anymore, because I have you. And for the first time in public, Khalid hugged him tightly. No shame, no fear, just love.